Hands behind your back, Arya. You're done playing games. Those were the last words I heard. Before my stepfather, Diego Rodriguez, kicked down my bedroom door while I was on a live, top-secret Pentagon briefing. Yeah, the Pentagon. 5 generals on screen, encrypted lines, national security-level intel. And this man, this small-town police captain, really thought he was about to arrest me for pretending to be in the military. But here's what he didn't know. I had 4 minutes before Protocol Thunder activated, and when it did, let's just say, Diego Rodriguez was about to get the shock of his life. My name is Arya Santos. I'm a high-ranking military officer, 2 stars on my shoulder, and the man who handcuffed me during a classified military briefing. He was about to be taken down by the United States military, in his own house, on his own turf. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to where it all started. I was 12 when my mom Valentina married Diego Rodriguez. Before that, it was just me and her against the world after my dad, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Santos, died in a training accident in Afghanistan. Mom was this fierce ER nurse in Oakland who could handle anything. Gunshot wounds, overdoses, Karens demanding to speak to managers, you name it. But grief, that knocked her sideways for a while. Diego swept in like some kind of savior, police captain, all muscle and authority, the kind of man who walked into rooms and expected everyone to stand at attention. At first, I thought he was exactly what we needed. Boy, was I wrong. See, Diego had this thing about being the smartest person in any room, and when a 12-year-old black girl started asking too many questions, correcting his facts at the dinner table, or, God forbid, showing interest in following her father's military footsteps, that's when the mask started slipping. "Military ain't for girls like you, mija," he'd say with that condescending smile. "Especially not black girls. You'd spend more time fighting discrimination than serving your country." I took that as a challenge. While Diego was out playing neighborhood sheriff, I was plotting my escape through excellence. Honor roll wasn't enough. I needed valedictorian. JROTC wasn't enough. I needed leadership positions. Academic competitions, debate team, volunteer work. I did it all. When I got accepted to West Point at 17, Mom cried tears of joy. "Diego?" He just shook his head and said, "You sure you're not biting off more than you can chew, little girl?" That was the last time he called me little girl to my face. West Point was brutal, but it forged me into something Diego's narrow mind could never comprehend. I graduated 3rd in my class, commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant, and then, well, that's when things got interesting. See, while Diego was busy writing traffic tickets and breaking up bar fights, I was coordinating supply chains across 3 continents. While he was investigating shoplifting cases, I was briefing generals on strategic resource allocation. While he was arresting drunk college kids, I was running covert operations that would make his head spin. But here's the kicker. I stopped telling him about my promotions after captain, not because I was ashamed, but because every achievement seemed to make him more hostile. Little did I know, that decision would almost get me arrested by my own stepfather. By the time I hit lieutenant colonel at 34, Diego's comments had shifted from playful teasing to straight-up sabotage attempts. Family dinners became interrogations. "So what exactly do you do these days, Arya? Still playing army behind a computer screen? Must be nice getting promoted so fast. I wonder what kind of quotas they're filling these days." The audacity of this man. Mom would try to change the subject, but the damage was done. Diego couldn't handle that his little girl had outranked most of the cops he knew, and was briefing people who could end his career with a phone call. So I made a decision that would come back to haunt me. I started lying about my job. "Just logistics stuff, Diego. Nothing exciting. Training exercises, paperwork mostly. You wouldn't find it interesting." But lying to Diego Rodriguez was like trying to hide blood from a shark. The man was a cop, after all. He could smell deception from 3 counties away, and that's when things got interesting. Fast forward to last month. I'm 36 years old, full colonel, running classified operations that I can't even tell you about in this video. My condo in San Diego had a major electrical fire, and I needed a secure location to work remotely for 6 weeks. Mom offered their guest house in Sacramento. Diego's barely home anyway, she said. "He won't bother you." Famous last words, right? I should have known better. I should have stayed in a hotel. I should have requested military housing. But after years of keeping my family at arm's length, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could try again. The moment I walked into that house with my encrypted laptops, secure phones and biometric equipment, I could see Diego's cop brain spinning. He tried to play it cool, but those eyes were already building a case. Day 1. Interesting setup you got there, Arya. Looks pretty high-tech for logistics work. Day 2. That was a long call. Everything okay with your inventory reports? Day 3. Funny how the government pays for all that fancy equipment just for supply chains. By day 4, I realized Diego Rodriguez wasn't just curious about my work. He was investigating me. This man went full CSI on his own stepdaughter. I started finding my laptop moved slightly when I'd leave the room. My phone would be face down when I'd left it face up. Papers on my desk would be in different orders. Then I found the notes, hidden in his home office, pages of observations about my daily routine, times of my calls, names he'd overheard me mention, license plates of cars that had delivered equipment to the house. But the real kicker, he'd been running background checks on my contacts using his police department access. This man was literally investigating a 2-star general using his small-town police credentials, thinking he was about to crack some kind of federal fraud case. The irony was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Things escalated when Diego's police buddy Xavier came over for dinner. This fool really sat at my mother's table and said, "So, Diego tells me you've been playing some kind of military role-play game online. That's interesting." Mom looked confused. I looked at Diego. Diego looked proud of himself. That's when I knew we were past the point of no return. "Role-play game?" I asked sweetly. "Is that what we're calling it?" Diego leaned back in his chair like he'd just solved the crime of the century. "Come on, Arya. All those encrypted calls, the fancy equipment, the mysterious military contacts. You're either running some kind of scam or you're in way over your head pretending to be something you're not. Pretending, that's what he thought I was doing. He actually looked me dead in the face and accused me of faking everything, my uniform, my rank, my entire career. Like 15 years of service, sacrifice and leadership meant nothing to him. But you know what I did? I smiled, because I knew something Diego didn't know. In exactly 72 hours, I had a classified briefing scheduled with the Pentagon, and this time there was no way he could miss it. The night before the briefing, I couldn't sleep, not because I was nervous about the operation, I'd run dozens of these, but because I could feel Diego's energy in the house. He was planning something. I could sense it. Around 2 a.m., I heard him on the phone in the garage. "Yeah, I think tomorrow's the day. She's got some kind of big meeting scheduled. No, I'm telling you, something's not right. This could be federal fraud, identity theft, maybe even terrorism-related." Terrorism-related. This man actually thought his own stepdaughter was a terrorist because she had encrypted phones and spoke to people with military ranks. I should have packed up and left right then. Should have called my commanding officer and requested immediate relocation. Should have done anything except what I actually did. But see, I was tired. Tired of running. Tired of hiding. Tired of making myself smaller so Diego Rodriguez could feel bigger. So I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to let the briefing happen exactly as scheduled. Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. The most important briefing of my career was about to begin. This wasn't just any operation. This was something I'd been planning for 8 months. Something that could potentially save American lives overseas. Something that required perfect timing, absolute secrecy, and 0 interruptions. I locked my door, activated my secure channels, and sent Mom a text. "In important meeting, please keep house quiet for next 2 hours." She responded with a thumbs-up emoji. What I didn't know was that Diego had been waiting for this moment. In his mind, this was going to be his big reveal, his chance to expose the fraud he'd been investigating for weeks. At exactly 8:05 a.m., my secure connection went live. 5 faces appeared on screen. Generals, colonels, joint operations directors. people whose names I can't even mention in this video. "Good morning, Colonel Santos," General Williams said. "Are we ready to proceed with Operation Nightfall?" "Affirmative, sir. All assets are in position." That's when I heard it. The soft click of someone trying my door handle. I ignored it and continued the briefing. "First extraction point is compromised. Recommend we move to the secondary location in Kabul." The door handle turned, subtle at first, like someone testing it quietly. "Casualties should be minimal if we maintain the current timeline." Then came the pounding. Heavy, deliberate, impossible to ignore. General Williams frowned. "Colonel Santos, is everything secure on your end?" "Yes, sir, just a minor—" And then the door exploded inward. Diego had kicked it clean off the hinges, right in the middle of a classified Pentagon briefing. Diego burst into my room like he was raiding a meth lab, gun drawn but not aimed, handcuffs ready, chest puffed out like he'd just cracked the case of the century. "Hands behind your back, Arya! You're done playing games!" On my screen, 5 military officers froze. General Williams' face went stone cold. Colonel Martinez reached for something off-screen. I slowly unmuted my microphone and said the words that would haunt Diego Rodriguez for the rest of his life. "General Williams, we have a code red security breach. Initiating Protocol Thunder immediately." Diego stepped closer, still in full cop mode. "You think that scares me? Fake generals on a computer screen and some fancy apps don't make you military, little girl." General Williams leaned forward. "Colonel Santos, confirm your location and threat level." 2247 Elm Street, Sacramento. Domestic interference with classified briefing. Threat level contained but escalating. Protocol Thunder confirmed. Response team dispatched. ETA 4 minutes. The screen went black. Diego laughed. Actually laughed. "Nice try, Arya, but I've investigated stolen Valor cases before. I know a fake when I see one." He grabbed my wrist and clicked the first handcuff on. "You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer, fraud, and whatever other charges I can think of by the time we get to the station." Click. Second handcuff. I didn't resist, didn't fight, didn't scream, because I knew what was coming. 3 minutes and 47 seconds later, the sound of engines echoed through the quiet Sacramento neighborhood. Diego looked up, confused. Heavy engines, multiple vehicles, getting closer. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, walking to the window. When he looked outside, his face went pale. 5 black SUVs, military plates, pulling into his driveway with the precision of a choreographed dance. This is some kind of trick," he stammered. "Some kind of setup." The vehicles stopped. Doors opened in perfect synchronization. 12 men and women in military fatigues stepped out, moving with the fluid efficiency of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. The lead officer, I'll call him Commander Johnson, walked up to the front door and knocked. Not pounded. Knocked. Professionally. "United States Military. Open the door." I wish you could have seen Diego's face at that moment. This was the exact second his entire reality crumbled. Mom opened the door with shaking hands. Commander Johnson stepped inside, followed by his team. They moved through the house like water, securing perimeters, checking sightlines, doing everything with calm, practiced efficiency. Diego backed against the wall, still holding the handcuff keys. Commander Johnson looked around the room, assessed the situation in about 3 seconds, and then spoke in the most professionally devastating tone I've ever heard. "Sir, you are currently restraining Lieutenant Colonel Arya Santos, Deputy Director of Joint Strategic Operations. Release her immediately." Diego's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Lieutenant Colonel? But she's logistics. She's—" "Sir," Commander Johnson interrupted, "you have interfered with a classified federal briefing and unlawfully detained a ranking military officer. I need you to remove those restraints now." Diego fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get them in the lock. The moment the cuffs clicked off, 2 officers flanked me protectively while a third began photographing the broken door and documenting the scene. "Are you injured, Colonel Santos?" "Negative. but I want this interference formally processed through military channels." "Understood, sir." Commander Johnson turned to Diego. "You're being taken into military custody for interference with a federal operation." They arrested Diego Rodriguez in his own house, in front of his wife, with the same calm professionalism he thought he was demonstrating when he kicked down my door. The irony was absolutely beautiful. As they were leading Diego out in actual military restraints, not his small-town police handcuffs, he kept protesting. "I didn't know, she never said. How was I supposed to know she was really a colonel?" Commander Johnson paused at the door. "Sir, with respect, ignorance of someone's rank doesn't justify interfering with national security operations. Besides," he added, looking back at me, "Lieutenant Colonel Santos has been recommended for promotion to full colonel. Her security clearance is higher than most generals I know." Diego's legs actually gave out. Mum had to catch him. But here's the part that made me laugh. Even in that moment, even with overwhelming evidence that he'd screwed up monumentally, Diego couldn't let go of his narrative. But she lied to me. She said she did logistics." Commander Johnson smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. "Sir, when someone with top-secret clearance tells you they do logistics, that usually means their actual job would blow your mind and potentially compromise national security if they told you the truth." 3 hours later, after the scene was processed and Diego was officially in military custody, they brought me to the detention facility where he was being held. I didn't have to talk to him. I could have walked away and never looked back. But after 15 years of being diminished, dismissed and doubted by this man, I had some things to say. When I walked into that sterile military interview room, Diego looked up with eyes that had lost all their arrogance. No more cop swagger, no more condescending smiles, just a broken man who'd finally realized he'd been punching above his weight class for decades. "Arya, Colonel Santos," I corrected. "Or ma'am, your choice." He swallowed hard. "Colonel Santos, I didn't know." "You didn't know because you never asked, Diego. You assumed. For 15 years, you assumed you knew what I was capable of, what I deserved, what I could achieve. You built an entire narrative about who I was, and refused to let reality interfere with your story. You want to know what I really do? I coordinate operations that save American lives. I brief senators on national security threats. I've prevented attacks you'll never hear about on the news. While you were arresting drunk drivers, I was stopping international incidents." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because men like you don't listen, Diego. You hear what confirms what you already believe and ignore everything else. I could have shown you my commission papers, my security clearance, my service record, and you would have found reasons to doubt all of it. Besides, I didn't owe you proof of my worth. I never did." Diego sat there for a long moment, processing. Finally, he looked up with tears in his eyes. "I was scared," he whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "Scared of what?" "Of being less than you, of not being the man of the house, of your mother seeing that her daughter had grown beyond anything I could understand or control." There it was, the truth he'd never admitted even to himself. Diego Rodriguez, tough guy police captain, had spent 15 years trying to diminish me because my success made him feel small. "I was intimidated by a 12-year-old girl," he continued, voice breaking. "And instead of being proud, instead of supporting you, I tried to keep you in a box where I could understand you." "Diego," I said finally, "your insecurity was never my problem to fix, but it became my trauma to carry." The military review board was thorough but fair. Diego lost his police credentials permanently. His interference with a classified operation meant he'd never work in law enforcement again. The career he'd built his entire identity around? Gone. But I made sure he understood something important. This isn't revenge, Diego. This is consequences. There's a difference. The hardest part came next. Dealing with Mom. Mom took it harder than I expected. When they told her that her husband had been investigating her daughter like a common criminal, something inside her broke. "All these years," she whispered when we finally sat down to talk, "I knew he was difficult with you, but I told myself it was just his way, that he cared but didn't know how to show it. I chose comfort over truth, Arya. I let him dismiss you, belittle you, question you, because it was easier than confronting him. I failed you as a mother. I won't lie, hearing her say that hurt. But it also healed something. Mom, you were grieving Dad and trying to rebuild a life. I understand why you chose stability over confrontation, but we can't go back to that dynamic. Not ever. She nodded, tears streaming. What do we do now? We build something new, something honest, something that doesn't require me to make myself smaller so he can feel bigger. And Diego? Diego made his choices. Now he gets to live with them. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody saw coming. 2 weeks after Diego's arrest, I got a call from Commander Johnson. Colonel Santos, we've discovered something interesting in Diego Rodriguez's investigation files. Turns out, while Diego was busy trying to prove I was a fraud, his deep dive into my background had accidentally uncovered something else entirely, a legitimate security threat. One of his suspects, a contractor who delivered equipment to the house, was actually under FBI investigation for selling information to foreign operatives. Diego's amateur detective work had stumbled onto a real national security issue, so in the most Diego Rodriguez way possible, he'd been completely wrong about everything he thought he was investigating, but accidentally helpful with something he had no idea he was uncovering. The FBI wanted to offer him a deal, cooperation with their investigation in exchange for reduced charges. But here's the kicker. They needed my approval since I was the one he'd wronged. I could have said no, could have let Diego face the full consequences of his actions. Part of me wanted to. But then I thought about something my father used to say. True strength isn't about crushing your enemies, Mika. It's about choosing mercy when you have the power to destroy. I approved the deal. Not because Diego deserved it, not because I forgave him, but because I was choosing who I wanted to be moving forward. 3 months later, Diego's cooperation helped the FBI arrest 7 people involved in selling classified information. His police instincts, however misdirected, had actually served his country in the end. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I'm sitting in my new office at the Pentagon. Yeah, they promoted me to full colonel after all this. And I get a letter, handwritten, return address, Sacramento County Correctional Facility. It's from Diego. Colonel Santos, it begins. Not Arya, not stepdaughter. Colonel Santos. I've had 6 months to think about what I did, about who I was, about the damage I caused to someone who deserved better from me. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing to take full responsibility. You were 12 years old when I met you, and instead of being the father figure you needed, I spent 15 years trying to prove you weren't as exceptional as you obviously were. I robbed you of a safe home, and I robbed myself of the honor of watching you become the incredible woman and officer you are today. Your mother is filing for divorce. I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to be married to the man I was either. But I want you to know, every day for the rest of my life, when someone asks me about my biggest regret, I'm going to tell them about the brilliant, determined, patriotic young woman I was too small-minded to appreciate. You were never the problem, Arya. You were never too much, too ambitious, too military, too anything. You were exactly who you were supposed to be. I was the one who was too little. Respectfully yours, Diego Rodriguez, former police captain, current student of humility. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. Not because I forgave him, that's still a work in progress, but because it was the first time in 15 years that Diego Rodriguez had seen me clearly. Today, I'm Colonel Arya Santos. I brief senators, coordinate international operations, and yeah, I occasionally get recognized at Starbucks by people who've seen this story on social media. Mom moved to an apartment near my base. We have dinner every Sunday, just the 2 of us. She's learning who I am without Diego's voice in her head, and I'm learning who she is without his control. The guest room where Diego handcuffed me. Mom turned it into an art studio. She's painting again for the first time in 20 years. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what happened, if I hate Diego for what he put me through. Here's the truth. I'm grateful. Not grateful for the trauma or the years of being diminished, but grateful that his attempt to destroy me in front of 5 generals backfired so spectacularly that it actually launched my career to the next level. Grateful that his investigation led to stopping actual national security threats. Grateful that his arrest forced conversations in my family that were 15 years overdue. And grateful that I finally got to see him face the consequences of underestimating a black woman who refused to stay in the box he built for her. See, Diego thought power came from control, from making other people smaller, from being the loudest voice in the room. But real power comes from competence, from integrity, from showing up consistently and doing the work. Real power is walking into a room full of generals and belonging there not because you demanded respect but because you earned it. Real power is your stepfather trying to arrest you for stolen valor and ending up in military custody while you get promoted. Real power is choosing mercy when you have every right to choose revenge. To every young black woman watching this who's been told she's too much, too ambitious, too loud, too military, too anything, let me tell you something. They're not trying to shrink you because you're not enough. They're trying to shrink you because you're more than they can handle. Keep growing, keep achieving, keep refusing to fit in boxes that were never built for women like us. And if anyone tries to handcuff you during your moment of triumph, well, just make sure you have Pentagon-level backup. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know. What's the moment you realized you were more powerful than someone tried to make you believe? And don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, I've got more stories where this came from. This is Colonel Aria Santos, reminding you that the best revenge is success so loud they can't ignore it.